I'm very glad indeed to be here with you to talk about this problem, because there is no place in the country where the problem of how to put learning back in the classroom is more important than in this particular area of New York. I need spend no time whatsoever on the proposition that the state of schooling, elementary, secondary, higher schooling in the United States is deplorable. That evidence is available for all of us to see. It is a conclusion that all of us recognize and are aware of. At the lower levels, we have seen problems arise, particularly in the major cities and particularly in the inner cities. We have seen problems of discipline, problems of schools becoming places for keeping people rather than for schooling and educating people. Throughout the country, SAT scores, college board scores have been going down for some 15 or 20 years. At every level, we have a deplorable state of our present educational system. And as I say, I need spend very little time over the fact that it is a problem about which we should be very much aware and about which it is essential to try to do something. There are two fundamental questions. The first is why? What has happened? Why is it that education in the United States today is in so deplorable a state? And of course, the second question is, what can we do about it? Is there some way in which, by taking thought and acting, we can turn the direction of movement around? Instead of the problem getting worse and worse and worse, we can turn it around and get it better and better and better. I want to direct my attention first to the question of why. Why are we in this spot? And then I want to turn to the question of what we can do about it. In my opinion, there are two fundamental reasons why the problems that have developed in schooling are what they are and have developed the way they have. The one reason, the immediate reason, the reason that we can all see, is the increasing centralization and bureaucratization of schooling. Education has increasingly become centralized, has increasingly moved away from the control of the local community to the control of broader and broader communities. It has moved away from control of the parents to control by educational administrators. Now, there is nothing wrong with educational administrators. They are fine people. Indeed, some of my best friends are educational administrators. So I have no prejudice against them. But as in every area, the question is the ultimate task of schooling the children running the administrators, or are the administrators running that task? Who's in the saddle? This tendency toward increasing centralization and bureaucratization is the direct way in which the schooling problem has become worse. But it reflects a deeper force. On a deeper level, what it reflects is a change in the basic philosophy in our society on the relation between the individual on the one hand and the society on the other. I believe that in part what is happening in schooling is a manifestation of a force that is having effects on a much broader area over many other phenomena. And I want to come in discussing more fully the reasons for the deplorable state of public education to how this change in basic philosophy is related to the problem of schooling in particular. Let me start on a very much broader level. There's a British physician by the name of Dr. Max Gammon who spent the past 5 years studying the British health system, the nationalized medicine in Britain. And on the basis of his study, he formulated a theory which he calls the theory of bureaucratic displacement. Now, this theory is really an extension of the famous law by F. Northcote Parkinson the historian. Some of you may remember that he's written a number of books that are supposedly humorous but are really very serious. And the major thrust of his law, of Parkinson's law, is that work expands to fill the time available. Another version of it, another element of it, is that spending always increases to exhaust whatever funds are available. Dr. Gammon's version of it is a rather different one. In his version of it, he says, in any large bureaucratic organization, useless work tends to displace useful work. The more bureaucratic an organization is, the larger the fraction of the people who are spending their time on shuffling papers, and the fewer the people who are producing useful things. Input goes up, and output goes down. Now, Dr. Gammon developed this on the basis of the British medical system. He showed in the British health system that the number of people employed in the system was going up, and the number of hospital days of beds occupied was going down. But the U.S. education system gives an even better illustration of that tendency. The evidence is really striking. In the 5 years from 1971, the school year 71-2 to the school year 76-7, in that 5-year period, the total professional staff in all schools in the United States, this is for the United States as a whole, the total professional staff went up 8%. The cost per pupil went up 68%. Now, much of that was due to inflation. But even if you take out the inflation effect, the cost per pupil went up 21%. So input went up. More people, more money. What about output? Well, the number of students went down 4%. The number of schools went down 4%. And needless to say, if instead of looking only at measures of quantity, you were also to look at measures of quality, the quality of the output went down too. The SAT scores, the scores on college board exams, the scores on all sorts of common tests show that the performance has been declining. Similarly, reading levels in the elementary and secondary schools have been going down. The level of math performance has been going down. So here you have 5 years in which you're spending more to hire more people, and on the other side, the number of students you're teaching and the number of schools you're teaching is going down, and the quality is going down. I do not have strictly comparable figures for New York City, but I have some for New York State, and Babette was good enough to provide me with a few for New York City just before. For the nation as a whole, the cost per pupil in 5 years went from $829 per pupil per year to $1,395 per pupil per year, to $1,400. That's countrywide. In the state of New York, it is $1,991. In New York City, it is $2,700. And I think that nobody would show any surprise that the higher the expenditure per pupil, the lower has been the quality of teaching per pupil. So even these comparisons across states in the country tend to suggest what an important addition to our scientific knowledge Dr. Gannon has produced in his law of bureaucratic displacement. I may say that the costs in New York State are the highest in the nation, except only for Alaska. And the reason costs are higher in Alaska, of course, is very clear. It has nothing to do with the same kinds of problems. It's just that all the costs in Alaska are higher, and that all the wages, prices, and everything are much higher because of the distance and the cost of getting stuff there. But after Alaska, New York is the highest. Now, it will come as no surprise to you that the next highest state in the nation is my own home state, Illinois. And I guess there is perhaps little argument that New York and Illinois, and especially New York City and the city of Chicago, and especially in those two cities, in the poorest areas, in the areas of black occupation, black residency, that those areas have among the lowest educational quality in the nation. So you'll have a crystal clear illustration of the tendency that the more you centralize authority and bureaucratize it, the more it costs you to produce less and less.